My name is Tyler and I work the graveyard shift at a 24-hour convenience store right off Route 52. The place sits at the edge of town where the highway stretches into nothing but darkness and farmland. Most nights I am completely alone from 11 at night until 7 in the morning. It is not a bad gig, honestly. The pay is decent enough and the work is easy. I restock shelves, mop floors, ring up the occasional trucker or late-night traveler. The regulars know me by name, and I have gotten used to the quiet hum of the coolers and the buzz of the fluorescent lights overhead. It was around 1 in the morning on a Wednesday when she first walked in. The store had been dead for hours, and I was halfway through restocking the chip aisle when the door chimed. I looked up and saw a woman who appeared to be in her mid-40s. She had her hair pulled back neatly in a low bun and was wearing a beige cardigan over dress pants with clean, flat shoes. She looked like a teacher or maybe an office worker. Nothing about her seemed out of place or threatening. She walked slowly through the aisles and picked up a bottle of water and a chocolate bar. When she approached the counter, she smiled warmly at me and asked if we had a restroom. I pointed toward the back and she thanked me. While I rang up her items, she started making small talk. She asked how long I had been working this shift and whether I found it tiring. I told her it was fine and that I was used to it by now. Then she said something that caught me slightly off guard. She told me I seemed like a hard worker and that I looked trustworthy. She asked if I ever thought about making extra money on the side. She said she knew a lot of young people needed additional income. I gave her a polite but vague answer and said I was doing all right for now. She smiled again and nodded as if she understood. She paid for her items and then did something unusual. She pulled a $20 bill from her wallet and dropped it into the tip jar on the counter. That was a lot for a transaction that only cost about $4. She thanked me again and walked out into the night. I watched her get into a dark-colored sedan parked near the edge of the lot. The whole interaction felt a little odd, but I brushed it off. People can be generous sometimes, and maybe she was just being kind. About a week later, she came back. It was around 2 in the morning on a Thursday, and I was wiping down the counter when the door chimed again. This time, she was not alone. There was a man with her who looked to be in his early 30s. He was wearing a gray hoodie, jeans, and clean sneakers. He had a friendly face and an easy smile. The two of them walked in together and started picking up items around the store. They grabbed sodas, a few bags of chips, and some pre-made sandwiches from the cooler. When they came to the counter, the man was the one who started talking. He asked me what I was studying or if I had plans for a career. I told him I was taking a break from school and working full-time for now. He nodded and said that made sense. Then the woman chimed in. She said they were looking for delivery drivers for a small logistics company they worked with. She explained that the job was simple. You pick up packages from a warehouse and drop them off at various locations. Most of the work happened at night when traffic was lighter. The man added that they preferred hearing local people who seemed responsible. He said the pay was good, $2,000 per week in cash. I felt my stomach tighten. That was way more than I made at the store, and it sounded too good to be true. The woman leaned in slightly and said I seemed like a good kid and responsible. She suggested I step outside for just 5 minutes to meet their manager, who was sitting in a van in the parking lot. She said he could explain everything better than they could. I felt a chill run through me. Something about the whole situation felt wrong. The way they both looked at me, the overly friendly tone, the vague details. I shook my head politely and said I appreciated the offer, but I was good where I was. The woman glanced at the man and I saw something pass between them, a look I could not quite read. They both smiled, but it felt forced this time. They paid for their items without saying anything else and walked out. I watched them through the window as they headed toward a dark van parked near the far edge of the lot. I could not see anyone inside it. The next morning I told Maria, the day shift manager, about what had happened. She listened carefully and her expression grew serious. She told me that if those people came back, I should call the police immediately. She said she would check the security camera footage and make sure someone was always reachable if I needed help. She also reminded me to keep my phone on me at all times. A few nights passed without incident. I started to think maybe they had moved on or lost interest. But then on Tuesday night around 3 in the morning, I glanced out through the front windows and noticed a car parked in the far corner of the lot. It was a dark sedan with its lights off. No one got out. No one came into the store. It just sat there. I kept an eye on it while I worked, and it stayed in that same spot for about 20 minutes. My heart started racing. I pulled out my phone and tried to take a picture of the license plate, but the angle was bad, and the image came out too dark and blurry to make out the numbers. I was about to call the police when the car suddenly started up and sped out of the lot. I stood there for a moment, just staring at the empty space where it had been. I felt uneasy for the rest of my shift. Thursday morning, my shift ended at 7, and I got on my bike to ride home like I always did. It usually took me about 15 minutes. The route took me down a quiet road that ran alongside a cornfield and then through a residential area. It was still dark outside since it was winter and the sun had not come up yet. I had been riding for maybe 5 minutes when I glanced at the small rearview mirror attached to my handlebars. There was a car behind me, a dark-colored sedan driving slowly, too slowly. I kept pedaling and took a left turn onto a narrower side street. The car followed. My pulse quickened. I told myself it could be a coincidence. Maybe they were just heading in the same direction. But then I took a right turn into a neighborhood with more houses. The car was still behind me. I started pedaling faster. My breath came out in quick clouds in the cold air. I turned onto another street where I could see lights on in a few of the houses. People were waking up early for work. I rode up to a house that had its porch light on and stopped right in front of it. I stood there with my bike, pretending like I lived there. I glanced back and saw the car roll past slowly. I could not see the driver clearly through the tinted windows. It continued down the street and then sped up and disappeared around a corner. I waited there for a full 10 minutes, my hands shaking on the handlebars. When I was sure the car was not coming back, I rode the rest of the way home as fast as I could. I did not sleep well that day. Saturday night around 1:30 in the morning, the woman came back. This time she was alone. I was restocking the drink cooler when the door chimed and I turned to see her walking in. Her smile was different this time, colder, less friendly. She picked up a bottle of soda and a pack of gum and brought them to the counter. As I rang her up, she looked directly at me and asked, "Still happy with your job?" I kept my voice steady and said, "Yes, ma'am." She did not look away. She just stared at me for a few seconds without saying anything. Then she asked, "You live around here?" My stomach dropped. I gave her a vague answer and said, "Not too far." She nodded slowly and smiled that cold smile again. She said, "Good to know." While she stood at the counter, I quickly pulled out my phone and sent a text to Maria even though I knew she was off duty. I also texted Jake, the guy who worked the morning shift, and told him that the weird customer from before was back and that I felt unsafe. The woman took her time paying. She counted out exact change slowly, dragging out the interaction. Finally, she picked up her items and walked toward the door. But instead of getting into a car, she walked out into the parking lot and disappeared into the shadows near the back of the building. About 10 minutes after she left, I looked out the window and saw a van. It was dark-colored, maybe black or navy blue, and it was parked close to the back entrance of the store. The interior light was dim, and I could not see anyone inside clearly. My hands started to sweat. I felt that tight knot of fear forming in my chest. I walked quickly to the back door to make sure it was locked. It was. But then I heard something, a rattling sound. Someone was trying to turn the handle from the outside. My heart slammed against my ribs. I ran back to the front counter and locked the front door using the manual bolt. We almost never used it, but I was not taking any chances. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. My voice shook as I explained to the dispatcher that someone was trying to break into the store and that I was alone inside. She told me to stay on the line and said officers were on their way. I could hear the sound of the back door being shoved hard like someone was trying to force it open. I grabbed the wooden baseball bat we kept behind the counter for emergencies and held it tight. I glanced at the small security monitor on the counter. It showed the feed from the cameras outside. I could see two figures wearing ski masks near the back door. They were both men, and one of them was holding what looked like a crowbar. Then I saw movement near the front. A third person was walking around toward the front entrance. It was the woman. My phone buzzed. A text from Jake. On my way, 15 minutes early, hang tight. I felt a tiny surge of relief. The dispatcher on the phone asked if I was still safe, and I told her yes, but that there were people trying to get in. She said the police were 3 minutes out. Suddenly, the noise at the back door stopped. I looked at the monitor again. The two masked figures were running back toward the van. Headlights swept across the parking lot. Jake's truck pulled in fast and he jumped out. The van peeled out of the lot with a screech, speeding onto the highway. Jake ran to the front door and I unlocked it to let him in. He looked at me, his face full of concern, and asked if I was okay. I was shaking, but I nodded. The police arrived less than 3 minutes later. 2 patrol cars pulled into the lot and 4 officers got out. I explained everything that had happened. They asked to see the security footage and I showed them the monitor. The recording was clear. 2 men in ski masks attempting to force open the back door, one of them holding a crowbar, the woman standing near the front like she was keeping watch. At one point you could see one of the men holding a coil of rope and a large black duffel bag. Jake told the officers he had managed to snap a photo of the van's license plate as it sped away. He showed them the picture on his phone. The officers ran the plate and came back a few minutes later with bad news. The plate was fake. The van was likely stolen. One of the officers, a woman in her 40s, looked at me seriously and said this fit the pattern of a trafficking ring they had been tracking in the area. She said there had been a few similar incidents over the past couple of months. Young people working alone late at night being approached with job offers and then later being targeted. She told me I was lucky that I had not gone outside to meet them when they first asked. She said I did the right thing by staying inside and calling for help. Maria showed up about 20 minutes later, even though it was the middle of the night. She was furious that this had happened and told me in no uncertain terms that no one would ever work the night shift alone again. She said the company would hire security for overnight hours and that she was going to push for better safety measures across the board. The officers took my full statement and collected copies of the security footage. They said they would continue investigating and that they would increase patrols in the area. They told me to call immediately if I saw those people again. I still work at that store, but I never work alone anymore. There is always a security guard on site during the graveyard shift now, and Jake, or one of the other morning shift workers, usually shows up early to overlap with me for the last hour. I am more careful than I ever was before. I check my surroundings constantly. I keep my phone charged and within reach at all times. Even now, months later, I still think about what might have happened if Jake had not shown up early that night. Or what would have happened if I had been naive enough to walk out to that van in the parking lot when they first invited me. I think about the rope and the duffel bag those men were carrying. I think about the cold look in that woman's eyes. And I am grateful that I trusted my instincts when something felt wrong. Sometimes that gut feeling is the only thing standing between you and something terrible. I work as a night security guard at a 15-story office building in downtown. It was a Tuesday night, around 2 in the morning, middle of July, and the heat was brutal even underground. I had just finished my third patrol round in the parking garage, driving my little electric golf cart through the rows of cars. I parked next to my desk, grabbed a water bottle from the mini fridge, and sat down. The garage was quiet except for the distant hum of the air conditioning units and the yellowish glow of the fluorescent lights overhead. There were about 40 cars parked down here, mostly employees working late shifts and overnight visitors. I checked my phone and saw a text from my wife asking how the night was going. Everything felt normal, boring even. Just 5 more hours until my shift ended and I could head home. While I was drinking my water, I glanced up at the security monitors. I had 4 small screens showing different angles of the garage and building entrances. One of them displayed the elevator lobby in the basement. That's when I saw her. A young woman, maybe 25 years old, stepped out of the elevator. She was wearing a white button-up shirt and black dress pants, looking like she just came from an office. Her hair was tied back but seemed a little messy, like she'd been working for hours. Here's the thing, though. The elevators don't work after 10 at night unless you have a key card. I checked the sign and log on my computer. Nobody had registered to work late tonight, not a single person. She stood there in front of the elevator for a moment, looking around like she was searching for something. Then she started walking along the rows of parked cars, stopping at each one. Her movements were strange. She would look through the window, try the door handle, but never actually open any of them. I figured maybe she forgot where she parked her car. But why would she be coming out of the elevator at 2 in the morning? That didn't make sense. I decided to stand up and approach her, see if she needed help. I stepped away from my desk and called out, "Excuse me, can I help you?" She jumped, genuinely startled, and turned to face me with wide eyes. "Oh, thank God," she said, her voice shaking. "I thought I was alone down here." She explained that she had been working late on the 9th floor and just came down to grab something from her car. But she had left her car keys on her desk upstairs. She asked if she could borrow the key to get back into the office and retrieve her keys. I told her I didn't have individual keys for each office, only a master key for building access. She stared at me for a long moment, then said, "Could you come up with me then? It'll only take 2 minutes." Something felt off. The way she spoke sounded rehearsed, like she was reading from a script. Her facial expression didn't match her words either. She said thank God but didn't look relieved at all. I asked her, "What company do you work for? I need to check the registry." She hesitated just for a second, then answered, "Meridian Consulting, 9th floor." I knew right away that was wrong. Meridian Consulting was on the 11th floor, not the 9th. The 9th floor was a law firm. I didn't say anything, though. I just nodded and said, "All right, let me check the system." I turned and walked back toward my desk, and I could feel her eyes burning into my back the entire way. I got back to my desk and opened the computer to check the keycard access logs. She was standing about 15 feet away, waiting. I pulled up the entry history. Nobody had entered the building after 9 o'clock that evening. The basement elevator required a keycard to operate, so how did she use it? I looked up at the elevator camera and rewound the footage 10 minutes. I watched the elevator doors open and her step out. But here's what was strange. The elevator opened from the inside. Nobody swiped a card from the outside to call it. That meant she had been inside the building already. She didn't come in from outside. Maybe she had been hiding somewhere after business hours. I rewound the footage further, all the way back to 6 in the evening when people were leaving work. I fast-forwarded through hundreds of employees coming and going through the lobby. I didn't see her in any of that footage. Now I was really worried. I glanced at the live feed and saw she was still standing there, but now she was looking down at her phone, typing something. Her hands were trembling as she typed. I decided to check the exterior parking lot camera on ground level. That's when I saw it. A white van was parked near the exit ramp. The engine was running. I could see exhaust coming from the tailpipe. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat, but I couldn't make out their face from this angle. My heart started racing. I tried to stay calm. I said to her, "Do you have your company ID card? I need to verify your employment." She replied, "I left it in my purse at my desk." Her tone had shifted slightly, more irritated now. "Can you hurry this up? It's 2 in the morning." I said, "Yes, but according to policy, I need to call the building manager first." She tensed up immediately. "That's not necessary. It'll only take 2 minutes." I shook my head. "Sorry, it's protocol." I picked up the desk phone and pretended to dial. But I was actually watching the camera monitors. The van outside the back door swung open. A man stepped out wearing a black hoodie. He walked toward the main entrance of the building. He tried the door. It was locked. He stepped back, looked up at the building, and said something into his phone. Right at that moment, her phone buzzed. She looked down at it, then looked at me with a completely different expression. The fake fear and exhaustion were gone. Her eyes were cold and calculating. She said, "Can I use your restroom?" I pointed toward the public bathroom nearby. She started walking that direction, but then I noticed something. She was slowing down, glancing back toward the garage exit door. That door led to the stairwell and could take her up to ground level. If she went up there and opened the door for that man outside, I would be in serious trouble. I had to act fast. I called out loudly, "Wait a second, I need to see your ID." She stopped and turned around. "Why, I'm just going to the bathroom," I said. "New policy. I have to log the information of everyone in the building after 10 at night." She hesitated, then walked back toward me. When she got about 10 feet away, I pressed the silent alarm button under my desk. This button sent a signal directly to the police station without making any noise. I needed to stall for time. I asked, "What's your name?" She said, "Jessica Morgan." I pretended to type on my keyboard. "Address?" She gave me an address in the suburbs. I kept asking pointless questions. Phone number, date of birth, how long she'd been working here. She answered each one. But she was getting more and more anxious. She kept glancing at her watch. Her phone buzzed again. She looked at it, then said, "You know what? I don't need to go upstairs for my keys anymore. I'll just call AAA tomorrow morning to unlock my car. Can I leave now?" Her voice was completely different now. Hard, flat, no more pretending to be polite. I said, "Sure, but I need to finish this paperwork first." She stared at me. "No, I want to leave right now." She turned and walked toward the stairwell door. I stood up. "You can't go that way, that's a restricted area." She didn't stop. She broke into a run, pushed the door open, and bolted up the stairs. I ran after her. I chased her up the concrete stairwell. Our footsteps echoed loudly in the enclosed space. She was fast, taking the steps two at a time. I pushed myself to keep up. When she reached ground level, she shoved the door open into the main hallway. I caught up and grabbed her arm. "Stop!" She whipped around and shoved me hard. I stumbled backward but didn't fall. She screamed, "Don't touch me." I watched her run toward the main entrance. Then I heard it. Police sirens outside. Red and blue lights flashed through the glass doors. The police had arrived in only 4 minutes. She froze in her tracks, staring outside. Through the glass, I could see the man by the van. He was running back to the vehicle. The van's engine roared and it sped off. 2 police cars took off after it. She turned back to look at me. Her face had gone completely pale. She didn't run anymore. She just collapsed onto the floor, sitting with her head in her hands. 2 officers rushed in through the main entrance. I had unlocked it remotely using the security system. They asked what happened. I explained quickly that she had been inside the building for an unknown amount of time and someone outside was waiting for her. The officers handcuffed her. She didn't resist. One officer spoke into his radio. "Suspect in custody, second suspect fled in white van." The other officer asked me, "Do you have cameras?" I nodded. "Yes, everything's recorded." They led her outside. I stood in the hallway with my hands still shaking. The police stayed to take my statement and review the camera footage. They discovered that she had been hiding in a bathroom on the 12th floor since 5 in the afternoon. She waited until the building was empty, then came down to the basement. The plan was for her to go upstairs and unlock the main door for her accomplice. They were going to break into the law firms and financial companies on floors 9 through 11. Those offices had expensive equipment and valuable documents. The police told me the van had been caught after a 15-minute chase. The man was arrested. Inside the vehicle, they found lock-picking tools, empty backpacks, and chloroform. Both suspects had prior convictions for burglary and breaking and entering. The officers thanked me for handling the situation well. They said if I had let her go upstairs and open that door, things could have been much worse. I could have been hurt or killed. After the police left, I sat back down at my desk. I was shaking uncontrollably. I drank some water. The building manager called and praised me, said I would receive a bonus. But I didn't feel like a hero. I just felt lucky. Lucky that I paid attention to small details. Lucky that I didn't believe her story. Lucky that I acted when I did. I texted my wife. "Honey, something crazy happened tonight. I'll tell you when I get home." I looked at the clock. 3:15 in the morning. 3 hours and 45 minutes left in my shift. I stood up and started another patrol round. But this time, I checked every corner more carefully. I checked every door on every floor. I made sure nobody else was hiding in the building. From that night on, I never took anyone at face value during my shifts. Because sometimes the person who looks like they need help is actually the most dangerous person in the room. And the biggest lesson I learned was to always trust my gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. This happened about 3 weeks ago. I worked the night shift at St. Mary's Hospital in the medical records department down in the basement. It's not the worst job in the world, but after a while it starts to feel like you're just floating through time. The nights blend together. Same filing cabinets, same routine, same dull hum of the air conditioning and fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Hopefully something better comes along. I usually spend my shift organizing patient files, scanning documents, and occasionally running medications up from the pharmacy storage to the floors above. It's quiet down there, which I actually prefer. Most nights I only see the security guard making his rounds, maybe a few night shift nurses passing through, and once in a while a family member of a patient wandering the hallways. The basement has this particular feel to it, kind of damp, smells like disinfectant and old paper. Long corridors with that yellowish lighting that makes everything look older than it is. Around 1 in the morning, I was in the filing room organizing some charts that had piled up from the day shift. The room has a glass door, so I can see into the hallway even when I'm working. That's when I first saw her. A woman walked past slowly, just drifting by the door. At first, I didn't think much of it. I figured maybe she was a family member who got turned around looking for the elevators. But something was off. She wasn't wearing a visitor badge, wasn't in hospital clothing, just regular street clothes, jeans, and a dark jacket. I went back to my files and tried not to think about it. About 15 minutes later, I glanced up and saw her again. Same woman, same slow pace, walking in the same direction past my door. That struck me as weird. If she was lost, why hadn't she asked anyone for directions? Why was she walking the same route? I told myself maybe she was anxious about a sick relative, just packing to calm her nerves. People do that. I kept working. Then she appeared a third time. This time she didn't just walk past. She stopped near the doorway and looked in at me. Our eyes met for a few seconds. She didn't smile, didn't wave, didn't say anything. She just stood there staring, then continued walking. A chill ran through me. Something about the way she looked at me felt wrong. Why was she lingering down here in the basement? This area wasn't for visitors. I decided I needed to call up to the nurses' station on the upper floors and ask if anyone had reported a missing patient or a family member acting strangely. I picked up the desk phone and put it to my ear. Nothing. The line was dead. I tried pressing the buttons, hanging up and trying again. Still nothing. I pulled out my cell phone, but of course, down in the basement, there was barely any signal. No bars. I thought about going upstairs to find someone, but that meant walking through a long, dimly lit hallway by myself. The elevators were down one corridor, the stairs down another, and I hadn't seen anyone else down here for at least an hour. I stood there debating what to do. If I saw that woman one more time, I'd go upstairs immediately, I decided. I just needed to wait a few more minutes. I was standing near the doorway trying to decide my next move when I felt a hand land on my shoulder. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I spun around and saw a man standing there wearing scrubs and a hospital ID badge clipped to his shirt. He smiled at me friendly and said in a loud voice, "Hey man, I've been looking for you." I was confused. I'd never seen this guy before in my life. He kept talking. "You're Mike, right? I think we met at the new employee orientation last month." Before I could answer, he leaned in closer and dropped his voice to a whisper. "That woman out there has been watching you. I've seen her lurking around this area for the past half hour. Come with me, I'll take you up to security." My heart started pounding. I glanced toward the hallway and saw her, the woman, standing at the far corner, staring in our direction. A wave of relief washed over me. Thank God someone else had noticed what was going on. This guy was helping me. He put his hand on my arm gently and said, "Just act natural. Pretend we're having a normal conversation." I followed him out of the filing room and into the hallway. He kept talking, making small talk about working night shifts, how exhausting they were, asking me how long I'd been working at St. Mary's. I answered automatically, still feeling rattled but grateful someone was there. We walked past the records area, past the pharmacy storage, heading toward where I thought the elevators were. But he didn't stop at the elevators. He kept walking, leading me down another hallway, farther away from the main corridor. I asked him, "Where's security? Shouldn't we be heading upstairs?" He glanced at me and said, "Oh, I think it's better if we go outside first. The parking area has more cameras and security usually patrols out there." That made sense, I thought. We kept walking. I looked back over my shoulder and didn't see the woman anymore. That made me feel a little better. But then I started noticing where we were headed. We were walking toward the emergency exit at the back of the hospital, the one that led to the rear parking lot. This was a part of the building I knew didn't have much foot traffic, especially at night. The lighting was dimmer here, fewer overhead lights, and I knew from previous shifts that this area didn't have security cameras. The hospital had been meaning to install them but hadn't gotten around to it yet. A knot formed in my stomach. Said, "Hey, why aren't we going upstairs to find the charge nurse, or calling security on the radio?" He kept his grip on my arm and said, "Don't worry, we're almost there. She might still be following us, better to get outside." I tried to slow down to pull back, but his hand tightened on my arm, not painful but firm. "Can you let go of my arm? I think we should go back." He didn't let go. He smiled at me, but there was something cold in his eyes now. "We're almost there," he repeated. He was pulling me now, practically dragging me forward. I looked ahead and saw the emergency exit door just 20 feet away. Beyond that door was the dark, empty back parking lot. That's when it hit me like a brick. This wasn't a coworker. This wasn't someone helping me. This was a trap. I jerked my arm as hard as I could and screamed, "Let go of me." He yanked back, trying to keep his grip, but my arm slipped free. I turned and ran back toward the main hallway, sprinting as fast as I could. Behind me, I heard him shout, "Mike, come back here, Mike." My blood ran cold. How did he know my name? I never told him my name. I'd never seen him before. I ran around the corner and saw the woman standing in the middle of the hallway, blocking my path. She didn't say anything, just stood there staring at me. I swerved to the side and bolted down a different corridor, heading for the stairwell. I was screaming now, "Help! Somebody help me!" My voice echoed through the empty halls. I could hear footsteps behind me, more than one person. They were both chasing me now. I hit the stairwell door hard, slamming it open, and took the stairs 2 at a time going up. My lungs burned. I didn't stop. I kept climbing until I reached the ground floor and burst through the door into the main hospital corridor. I saw a nurse pushing a medication cart and I ran toward her, yelling, "Call security. Someone's chasing me." She looked startled, confused, but saw the panic on my face and immediately hit the emergency call button on the wall. Within minutes, security guards and hospital staff came running. I was shaking, out of breath, trying to explain what happened. 2 guards went down to the basement to search while another stayed with me. I told them everything. The woman who'd been watching me, the man who pretended to be a coworker, how he tried to lead me to the back exit, how he knew my name even though I'd never told him. The security team checked the camera footage. They found the man and woman entering the hospital together just before 11 that night. They walked in side by side, clearly together. The man wasn't an employee. His scrubs and ID badge were fake. The woman had been posing as a visitor to wander freely. The cameras captured the man's face clearly in several frames, but the woman had been careful. Every time she passed a camera, she either looked down or turned her face away. They were professionals. The police were called. They took my statement, reviewed the footage, and told me this was clearly a planned abduction attempt. They'd targeted me specifically. The officer said they'd start an investigation, check surrounding area cameras, see if they could track where the 2 suspects went after they fled the building. The hospital immediately increased security in the basement and made sure no one worked alone down there anymore. They sent me home early that night with pay. It's been 3 weeks and I still haven't heard if they caught them. The police said the man's face was clear enough that they should be able to identify him, but so far nothing. What terrifies me the most isn't that they tried to take me. It's that they knew my name. That means they'd been watching me before that night. They had information about me. They knew where I worked, what shift I worked, probably knew my routines. I wasn't a random target. They'd planned this. Every time I think about how close I came to going through that exit door, how close I was to being dragged into that dark parking lot, I feel sick. If I hadn't realized something was wrong when I did, if I hadn't fought back and run, I don't know what would have happened to me. I'm grateful I'm still here to tell this story. But I can't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, those two people know who I am, and I have no idea who they are.